This will be the lecture on water and irrigation. If we look at our water systems, the important message here is not to memorize all the different things, but look at the vast majority of our water is tied up in the ocean, which for most of our plants, as salt water, it's really unusable. This is the important number right here, because this is of all of the water, 1% is fresh water. 1% is everything that we need for us, for our animals, for our crops. That's all we have is a very small portion of water that's actually usable as far as the volume of water that's actually available on the planet. So where do plants get their water from? They can get it from groundwater, water that's already there. They can get it from precipitation when it rains, and they can get it when we irrigate. And how you are utilizing those different types of watering systems is greatly going to depend upon the type of crop that you're growing. Obviously, homeowners may be irrigating their outdoor plants. They're definitely irrigating any house plants. Greenhouses are irrigating everything that's on the inside. Most outdoor ornamental plant growers are going to use some sort of irrigation system as well. And a lot of farmers in this area are probably using, dependent upon precipitation, rainwater, but out west, they're also irrigating their crops. We can't really replenish water in the sense of making more water, but we do know that there's a cycle of water. All right, we have, if rain comes down, then it stops raining, and then we have evaporation off of the ground, off of our lawns, off of our plants, back into the air. We have evapotranspiration, which is water evaporating through a plant. So as plants pull water from the root system up through the leaves, it exits the leaves, some of it does, and that is evapotranspiration, and then again we get precipitation coming down. This is the basic water cycle. You don't need to memorize this, but what I want you to notice is this is a closed system. There is no water being added to this. There is no water being subtracted from this. So if we ruin the 1% of water that we have, we cannot easily make more water. This water cycle, the hydrologic cycle, the water cycle is global. Precipitation equals evaporation all over the world. Now, it might not in your region where you specifically live, but it does throughout the entire world. And that's the important part. The amount of rain that you get may be more or less than what you need, and that's going to define your climate. So a tropical rainforest is going to get an awful lot of rain. A temperate rainforest is going to get a pretty decent amount of rain, whereas a desert doesn't get very much rain. So it does define your individual region and your individual climate. We have these relationships, the supply of water and the demand for water. So the plants are demanding water, and we know this. We need to water them or they need to get rained on, and how much of that is available to them. We also have this relationship between evaporation and evapotranspiration, which gives us the relative humidity, which is the volume of water that's in the air. Now, if you want the official definition, the actual water content relative to the maximum the air can hold at any given temperature. So as temperature rises, the air can hold more water in it. Now that's pretty obvious. You go outside in the dead of summer when it's 100 billion degrees outside and you are immediately soaked in sweat and the air feels thick. You can tell the difference between humid air, whereas in the wintertime when the temperatures are colder, the air tends to be dry because it cannot hold as much water in the air. If you had 100% relative humidity, evaporation would equal condensation. Plants, as a general rule, like higher relative humidity than human beings do, and definitely our computers and things like that do. These look like these very complicated graphs, but they're not. So if we look at evapotranspiration, so this top one in the top left is for Indianapolis, and this one down here is for Seattle, Washington. Notice that ET is evapotranspiration, and it's basically the same for our plants throughout the year. So if we look at January, February, March, they're not using a whole lot of water. Their water usage increases as we go through April, May, June, July, August, and then it starts decreasing again through the winter months. Same thing in Indianapolis, and that makes sense. Plants aren't utilizing as much water when they're dormant through the winter. They're utilizing more water when they're active in the summer. But the thing to note is look at the precipitation. In Indianapolis, it's almost the same. Yeah, it goes up and down a little bit. It's almost exactly the same. But in Seattle, Washington, precipitation goes down in the summer. Evapotranspiration goes up in the summer, and precipitation goes down. So what does that mean for folks who are growing plants in Seattle? They're going to need to find a way to irrigate their plants in the summertime. We use lots and lots of different irrigation. These are different types of irrigation. So in the top left, we have a drip irrigation system. And the advantage to that is you're getting water immediately, directly to the plants that need it. It's a little harder to maintain. You do have to walk it regularly to make sure that the drip lines are not clogged with any minerals and are also not falling out of the individual pots. We can have large scale in the bottom right. You look large scale farming irrigation systems that can work also for nursery growers, large nursery growers of ornamental crops. In the bottom left, we have flood irrigation. That's not something we see in this country a whole lot, but it is something that keeps the water in the general vicinity of the plants without overloading their roots. And in the top right, something that we see a lot in this country, and that's irrigation, overhead irrigation. This happens to be an irrigation system, but it could be a simple oscillating sprinkler where you're putting the water through the air and the droplets fall down onto the plants. All of these have pros and cons. One of the major cons of irrigation systems is the volume of water that doesn't get to the plants because it's evaporated back into the air too quickly. These overhead irrigation systems here and here tend to evaporate a lot more water into the air than they are getting to the plants. There's pros and cons to all of them. And I'm not saying do or don't irrigate. The whole point here is to recognize that no matter what you do, there are going to be challenges. Most irrigation systems these days are smart irrigation systems, so they have sensors that you can use to sense plant available water, so they're not only coming on at times when the plants actually need the water. This is especially important for ornamental horticulture. We need to be able to irrigate our food crops. We need to be able to irrigate in greenhouses. But if you're planting them on a landscape as a garden, do you need to be able to irrigate? It might be easier to switch to plants that are used to the irrigation systems that are naturally in place. In other words, plants that are used to the precipitation the way it normally comes. We call that xeriscaping. Those are plants that are adapted to low water usage. We want to restore our wetlands because those are actually the way that we filter things, and those actually prevent water from running too fast into our sewer systems. We want to do plants adapted to different precipitation patterns. Native plants are usually really, really good. We can use plants with different metabolisms. Again, this is not a botany class, but chem metabolism is often what you see with our desert plants. They absorb a lot of the oxygen and carbon dioxide during the day, and then they keep it inside and they do the respiration type stuff at night when they're less likely to lose as much water because the temperature is different. Our C4 plants, our C4 grasses are very, very efficient with their water usage. Can we genetically engineer plants to be C4 plants? They're actually looking at that right now. I'm not going to click through to the link. You can on your own. Again, this is not a botany class, but if you want some more information about C4 plants, there's a link for you to tell you a bit more. This is a wetlands. Ohio has lost more wetlands than any other state except for California. We've lost about 96% of our wetlands. That's a large number of wetlands to lose, and the challenge that we're facing is that these wetlands actually help clean the water, they filter nutrients, they filter pollutants, and they prevent water from overloading our sewer systems and our storm systems. So we're in the process of trying to restore as many of these as we possibly can. This is an example of xeriscaping out west. So these are in the Arizona area. And this is examples of utilizing native plants and plants adapted to very, very low watering regimes. And then you might think, well, but I don't live in Arizona. I live in Ohio. What can I do in Ohio? We could do the same thing in Ohio. Not all of these are native plants, but a large portion of them are, and even the ones that are not native are adapted to the way the precipitation tends to fall in Ohio. Finally, rain gardens are a thing that we can do to, again, deal with water issues. What we're trying to prevent from happening is overloading our storm sewer systems. And rain gardens are a way to slow that water down so it slowly filters into the sewer systems, and that allows our mechanical systems to keep up with the natural systems and keeping our water clean. And that clean water then can be used for drinking and other purposes. As always, if you got questions, do not hesitate to get in touch.